We are hopeless, selfish creatures, and we need a savior.
She was a total heathen.
All right, we're doing a podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of An Exmo.
And a Never Mo,
Walk into a bar. I'm Kate.
I'm Erica.
And we have a guest with us today. This here is Rob Tobler. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Aloha. Thank you for including me. I'm excited.
Aloha. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm living in Kauai, Hawaii. Please don't hate me for that.
I kind of do.
A little bit.
Yeah.
You can't blame us.
But anybody who comes out, I will take you to lunch and take you on my favorite hike. So the invitation is out there.
Fantastic. Just have to find a way to
Yeah,
get to Hawaii.
we're gonna have to go to Hawaii.
Yes.
Two NoMos on the road.
Two NoMos on the road. It's gonna be great.
On the beach.
Yay. Well, Rob, I found you, Rob, on TikTok as a content creator, which is awesome because as an ex-Mormon, one of the things you miss a lot is community. And as I'm sure you recognize. And so when I left the church 2 years ago, I got on TikTok and I found people like me, and they were so validating, and their experience was like my experience. And so I found your content and I was like, I like his stuff. And as we were talking a little bit earlier, I love what you do is you're applying critical thinking skills to kind of deconstruct church history. I'm more of like the human element of it. Like, this is where the cognitive dissonance lies, and this is how I feel. But I love the way that you kind of dive in to like church history and doctrines and policies. So that's why we invited you on this episode. We're going to be talking about the CES letter, and more specifically, Joseph Smith's translation claims, which I know you have a lot to say about. So,
Thank you.
But before we do that, why don't we let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what your experience with the church is?
Well, I will. Thank you. I grew up in Nebraska and I did all the correct Mormon things. Served a mission in Argentina, went to BYU, got married in the Salt Lake City Temple. There was only one thing I didn't do. I couldn't get a testimony, but I have always loved the restoration. I've spent a lot of time studying it. So much so that I spent 16 years privately deconstructing by reading the Joseph Smith papers, hiding it from my wife or anybody because I didn't want to mess with their testimony or their beliefs.
And the Joseph Smith papers, like, which the church approves, right?
Yeah, my wife bought me the first volume, paper copy, very expensive, and that was her big mistake because I devoured that. And then when it got online, I was 4 hours a day just reading this stuff. And when we would go to bed, she'd roll over and go to sleep, and I'd put in the earphones and listen to another book about church history. I just had to get to the bottom of this. My children were really struggling. I have a daughter who's gay. And that was a real problem for her, the church's policies. So I had to figure out how to make the ship Zion work for my family. Mm-hmm. Now, my wife, who is Hispanic, she got to be an extra in the church's Bible videos. So she went down to Goshen, Utah, and there's 13 videos where, Jesus is there with a woman caught in adultery, and my wife's in the background. She's the one holding a rock. I'm just kidding.
I wouldn't be surprised.
When she came back, I asked her how her experience was. She says, "Oh, it was amazing, except that in between filming, I was talking with the actor portraying Jesus, and I caught myself feeling like uncomfortable, like I couldn't keep eye contact." And she says, "I don't ever want to feel that way, inadequate in the presence of the real Jesus." So she just went on this deep dive to build her relationship and understand the Jesus of Nazareth. And that was a problem because after COVID, when we were finally able to go back to church, she attended twice. I worked as an air traffic controller, so I wasn't able to work Sundays, although I was still teaching seminary. And she came to me and she says, "I don't think I want to go back to church anymore." And I was shocked. And she was trembling to tell me this. And I said, "Why?" She says, "Because the Jesus that the LDS church presents is not the same as the Jesus of the Bible." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, honey, look, everybody's got issues with the church, but I'm sure we can resolve this." She says, "Oh, do you have issues?" I said, yeah, but I don't want to tell you what they are. And she begged. And so I told her about polyandry. And she said, "You mean polygamy?" "No, polyandry." Mm-hmm. And so she looked into that. And I said, "Well, in the book of Abraham's a little bit of a problem." She looked into that, and within 2 weeks, she was resigned. She was done, and all of my kids followed her.
Wow.
And I'm the only member of record, so I throw myself into therapy. And the therapist said, "Hey, Rob, what do you want to talk about? Marriage, kids?" I said, "No, I got to talk about this faith crisis. It's killing me. This is an existential crisis for me." And the therapist one day suggested, she says, "Rob, I think you need to find your own voice. You've let these church leaders determine your ethics, your morality, all these years. You need to find your own voice." Now, I think what she meant was journaling. But I decided this would be a perfect opportunity to open up a TikTok account anonymously, just get this off my chest, just speak my truth. And people started watching my videos, and it felt very validating. And then I met brave, amazing people like Kate on there, and I thought, wow, this woman has got some serious, genuine vulnerability and a vast amount of love for her kid. I was impressed. And so maybe my TikTok career is coming to an end, but I've really enjoyed the ride. And here I am today, just talking about something that I really love, and it's interesting to me.
Thank you. And I will echo, I was super impressed with Kate, which is like what connected us and started our friendship. We'd known each other just briefly before that, did not like each other. She thought I was a dirty heathen. I thought she was approved with a rod for us.
Because I was.
Oh, we're true. We're true. I am a dirty heathen. She was approved with a rod for us. But then I found her TikTok, and I'd never seen anyone deconstruct. I was working in Mormon Central where everyone was Mormon and there was a wall. So for me, it was like being in the middle of a cult and struggling and not seeing anyone ever get out. And then someone was like, well, Kate got out and she made a TikTok, and it blew my mind. I was like, what? That this person could like deconstruct. So I reached out, we got dinner and had some wine, and we have not shut up since.
Yeah. And now we're inviting more people to come in and not shut up with us. We're so glad you're here. And was that like it for you too? When I left the church, it was like no one was more surprised than I was, because I was in. I was trying to do everything I could to make it make sense. And when I left, people were like, "Kate, you left?" Was it similar to, was that kind of your story too, Rob?
Very much so. In fact, when the church decided to make Book of Mormon videos, they used Kauai as one of the locations. So my family, my wife was the lead point person. She recruited local people, members and non-members, to be in these films. I was in a stake presidency. I was the seminary teacher. And here she is recruiting people into the church. And then boom, she resigns, and nobody has said a word to us. And it was just shocking. You know, we were the families that were always there for every activity, staying late, putting away chairs. And then all of a sudden we just disappear, and nobody seems to want to ask, or, shocking.
Wow. So were you kind of in a similar boat to Kate, where you were sort of ostracized by some folks? Did you lose all of those friendships?
Yeah. I mean, we actually continue to try to have game nights and invite our friends from church over for dinners and games, but nobody would address the subject. Like, "Hey, why haven't you come out to church? How you doing? What's up?" No, absolutely not. And then we noticed they started not inviting us to things. And then I, one day at work, decided, I really need to tell my family. But as I was mulling it over, I was so distracted that as an air traffic controller, I was distracted, and two airplanes got real close to each other.
Oh no.
And I realized, like, I have got to get this. So I called my parents on a break. I said, "Look, I can't do this anymore. Your daughter-in-law is no longer a member. She's resigned. And I, in all integrity, can't support this church anymore." And they were shocked. And I got the silent treatment for several months after that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I understand that that's very common with Mormons and people who leave the church. However, I hold a lot of grace for those people, because I remember what it was like. I don't know if you do, but when I was all in, if somebody left the church, it was almost like a death. When someone in my ward left, I didn't want to know why, because the church had kind of taught me that if somebody leaves, it's because they want to sin, or because their testimony isn't as strong as yours. And any relationship you have to have with this person has got to be transactional, where you can have a friendship with this person, but your sole objective is to bring them back to the church. is the messaging that I got. So
Yeah.
I give a lot of grace to those to the members of the church, because I used to be one of them. And I understand that thinking. It still sucks. I mean, it still sucks. But
it makes me really sad when I think about that, like, in relationships and what the church does to families and to friends. Like, to me, it's just super sad to see relationships torn apart like that.
Mhm.
And I see, as a never Mormon living here in Mormon Central, so many people struggling with their families, with their friends, with being ostracized and having to find new community. And I think that it's one of the things that just like super bums me out. And it's one of the reasons I reached out to you, because you'd mentioned that some of your friends were no longer your friends. And I was like, that stinks. Christ would be really pissed off about that. I'm not a Christian, but from what I know of the guy, he would not have been happy.
Right.
He'd be flipping those tables.
You'd be flipping those
You'd be
tables.
flipping tables.
Can I ask you quickly, just because for my own curiosity, are you guys still, when you did everything go, or are you guys still religious and not Mormon, or are you finding something? I'm just curious, because you mentioned about Christ.
Yeah. My wife, who was a convert from Catholicism, she seemed to like drop Mormonism and be just fine. For me, it was an existential crisis. If this isn't true, then what's the purpose of life? Who am I? Where am I going? Where did I come from? And so I threw myself into a lot of therapy. I dove deep into trying to make Christianity, the Bible, work. That was a problem. The Joseph Smith papers allowed me to see how Scripture was made. And then when I turned to the Bible scholarship and saw the same edits and manipulations, it fell apart for me as well. And it was such a crisis that I said to my wife, honey, would you consider going to South America and doing some plant medicine with me? And that was a game changer.
Wow.
And I hope you invite me back for that episode.
Yes.
No. We're doing that right now. We're hearing about that. Was it, did you do ayahuasca? Was that the...
I did. We went to Costa Rica, to a place called Soltara, because of their stellar reputation for safety and respect for the traditional ways. I thought about bringing a cup of ayahuasca for my beverage today, but I thought that might be a little too much.
That would be awesome.
But I went there with the intention to heal from religious trauma, because it's traumatic for me. The medicine seemed to want to teach me some more important lessons about forgiveness and about how to soothe my inner child. And it was beautiful. It blew my mind, and it was so healing. But 2 years later, I said, I want to address the religious stuff. So that's the time we went to Peru, hiked the Inca Trail, went to another retreat, sat with ayahuasca again, and I got exactly what I wanted. And I'm really at peace now. So
I love that for you. I actually came from church today. Which is why I'm wearing a Sunday dress, just because I like dressing up. But no, the church I went to is the Divine Assembly. I don't know if you've heard, but
I've heard the name. I don't know about it.
Yeah, it's the Utah's sober mushroom church, and so it's all about plant-based medicine, like plant medicine to help you with psilocybin, in this. Yes, but there are people that do the other things like the ayahuasca and all the different things to help with that journey, and so. I'm learning about that. And one of the major tenets of this Divine Assembly is there's nothing between you and the divine. There's no man, there's no organization, there's nothing between you and the divine. And you get to use this as your sacrament. The mushrooms are your sacrament, because here in Utah, they're all like, we get religious rights. And then other people are like, well, we get them too, So it's something that I'm exploring right now. And I think that plant medicine can just be incredibly healing. And so we'll report back on that sometime.
I can't wait to hear your story, because I have found that consuming the flesh of the gods as a sacrament, I've transitioned from a vertical spirituality to a horizontal and to an inward, and it's so wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that was sort of like the original spirituality. I'm reading a lot about sort of stuff like that right now. And I'm not religious. I grew up Episcopalian. I left when I was 14 because it stopped making sense to me, but also had sort of like a similar existential crisis where like I just came face to face with the fact that I was not going to exist one day. And before that, I believed like, oh, you die, I'm going to be on a cloud with Jesus, whatever. Episcopalian is sort of like Catholic light. But I've struggled with that for a lot of my life, but finding spirituality, I love that sort of that way of putting it is as horizontal, which is everything. So like we are the planet, we are the world.
We are the children. We're the ones who make a brighter day.
Exactly, right? There it is. But just about sort of connection. And in most of human like spirituality, it was woven into all the parts of our lives. So it was connected with food and artistry and storytelling. And all of that was a part of spirituality. Whereas now it's here in this building where you do this thing instead of on a hike, or when you're making a meal, or when you are making love. Like it's super separated. And I'm sort of like doing my own like weird deconstruction and learning about sort of all of that. And that's the way spirituality has existed for a long time.
Yes, the spirituality outside of Mormonism is so much bigger and so much better. And let me just give you one example. During one ayahuasca trip, I just wanted to be able to think about God and the afterlife without these Mormon vocabulary Lego building blocks. I wanted to, and I experienced what it would be like to literally be born again, and then to be held in feminine love where I had no identity yet, no language, and I was accepted and loved, and I was good just as I was. And it blew my mind, it really. So I champion it in a legal, healthy way with proper preparation, mindset and setting and all the things. So
we are going to Peru is what we're doing.
I've actually been to Peru. I didn't do ayahuasca when I was there, but I did the Inca Trail when I was 19, and it was amazing. I mean, mind-blowingly amazing. And we like ascended or descended at dawn. We like were at the gate of the sun or whatever. I can't remember, really long time ago. But it was a phenomenal experience. So we definitely need to do that. Yeah. I'm thinking we're also going to have to probably do a whole series on plant-based, sacrament, spirituality, whatever, maybe like after the fall, like going into the holidays.
For sure.
And maybe we'll have you back to talk more, because if you want to, I would love to hear. I love hearing about all of those experiences because I think they're pretty interesting.
And then I'm going to share my own. It's going to be so great.
And I'll share mine too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob. We're so glad to have you here. Today's topic, we did a little introduction about the CES letter. And I think if you're an ex-Mormon, you're familiar with the CES letter. You've read this, yeah?
Yes.
We invited him to talk a little bit about the CES letter. And so the topic for today is like Joseph Smith lost in translation, because we're going to talk about three major pieces of artifacts that were translated by Joseph Smith. The first is the Book of Mormon. The second is the Book of Abraham. And the third is the Kinderhook plates. Erica here has only read like one verse from the Book of Mormon.
She made me do it.
She did not love it.
Puked. It was awful. It was the way and delightsome bullshit. And I was like, this is horrible.
So we're going to touch on all of these and just love to hear your perspective of it. So we'll start with the Book of Mormon. Jeremy Reynolds wrote this, like lots of questions. We talked about this in a previous episode, but when we address the Book of Mormon, we understand that President Benson, who was a prophet when we were kids, said the Book of Mormon is the keystone or most correct book of our testimony. Like just as the arch crumbles if the keystone is removed, so does all the church stand or fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. That was a pretty bold statement right there. What do you think about that, Rob?
Well, I think they set themselves up, because if this book can be debunked, it all falls apart.
Yeah.
And again, this is the book that is supposed to draw us nearer to God than any other book. And I know that as we talk about the Mormon, we're going to be able to look at some silly, crazy stuff. But I guess I want to emphasize that for Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon was a solution. It was a solution to his family's financial problems, which they were in desperate poverty. It was a solution to their family's spiritual strife. I mean, Alvin had died, and a minister had said that your son, too bad he didn't get baptized, he's in hell. Joseph Smith Sr. wouldn't join a church. There was real religious strife in the family. And so with this epiphany of, hey, and one other thing, Joseph had been arrested for treasure digging.
Mhm.
And so he knew he couldn't go back into that. So this epiphany of like, hey, I could produce a book that would solve my family's financial problems. It'll solve our religious problems, and it'll give me something that I can do because I can't do treasure digging anymore. And I can explain where the Native American Indians came from. And he could get out his ideals in print. This was a real solution. Now it's going to fall apart, and I'm going to explain. We'll talk about why. But it was he's a gifted man, and this was a huge endeavor. And I want to make it clear, the Book of Mormon is not a translation. It was an oral dictation, a performance.
Right. We talked a little bit about like the rock and the hat, which I didn't know until I was 45, and I was a stalwart member of the church. No idea about the rock and the hat, which is why we think the whole idea you grew up with this, Rob, too. It's not just me. You grew up with the pictures of Joseph Smith poring over those gold plates and that sheet between him and Oliver Cowdery. And he's just reading. They're completely superfluous. Why have gold plates if all you can do is just put a rock in a hat and translate the Book of Mormon that way? What do you what are your thoughts on the gold plates? Like, why do they even exist?
Well, I don't think they did exist. They're not real.
Right. I don't.
I was in the original story, which like when I moved here and was told the original story, and I think it might have been your ex-husband.
Yeah.
In earnest was like, this is what happened that, and I was like, and so of course I was like, well, then the gold plates exist. Where are they in a museum? Like where? And he was like, no. So what happened is he was told not to tell anybody, but he did. Like this, this brilliant book that's supposed to charge the world, but he wasn't supposed to tell anybody about it, and he did. And then Moroni took the gold plates, and I was like, if someone told you that story today, like you would be like, if someone's like, oh my goodness, I heard from God in the gold plates, and I wrote a whole book about the meaning of life and everything, and I know everything, and they said, wow, that's amazing. Show me the gold plates. They said, oh, well, I wasn't supposed to tell anybody about it. So this angel came and took them away because he told me not to. You'd be like, fuck you. Like that. You're jerking my leg. Like that is not true. Jerking my chain, pulling my leg.
Yeah, we got you.
But I was like, how, like rational adults don't buy stuff like that. So the gold plates to me from the get-go were like, okay. And when he was telling me about it, I was like, maybe they're like in a museum. Maybe there was a thing or something. Like there's the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
They exist.
No.
They're written by people, but like no plates. Anyone saw them except for this one dude who made them up and actually later was like had a rock and a hat.
Yeah.
And it was probably an ayahuasca or who knows what.
No,
maybe.
To throw in there, like
I've
heard the theory that mushrooms were big. Psychedelic mushrooms were big in upstate New York.
Really?
Right? Well, yeah, they grow naturally. And I've heard of the theory. I'm not going to say this is fact because I don't have evidence to support it. But the theory is that Joseph Smith was mushrooms. When you think of like that whole experience in the Kirtland Temple where everybody was seeing angels and they're there for hours and hours and hours and having this amazing experience.
Definitely tripping.
It totally makes sense. Like, let's bake some into the sacrament.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. That is not fact-based, but makes sense.
Maybe. Well, Joseph Smith's fingerprints are all over this book. And even though we don't have the plates to double check, for the next two documents, we do have the originals. So this will be fun. One thing I want to point out is that as we look at the Book of Mormon, and right now I'm really enjoying a new biography by Ganesh Sherian called Joseph Smith, the Architect of Mormonism. And what he shows is that Joseph puts into the book all of his ideals. He's against kings. He's against the ideas of secret societies. He's against the idea of polygamy. He's against taxes. And then later, as his life unfolds, harsh reality. He'll smack up against harsh reality, and he will pivot. He'll pivot hard, and he will embrace secret societies. He will be crowned a king. He will embrace polygamy. He will begin charging taxes. And so we can see Joseph move away from the stuff that he put in the book.
Right. Because in the Book of Mormon, Erica, I don't know if you know this, but there were teachings from the prophets like polygamy's bad. You have one wife. You have one wife. You have no concubines. This is what you have in the Book of Mormon. But then later he comes out with the Doctrine and Covenants.
God made me do it. It was so hard for me to bang multiple women, but God said I have to. So by golly, I'll grit my teeth and I will do it.
Take one for the team.
Right. But you're right. Those things changed. And I mean, he wanted to run for president of the, didn't he run for president of the US? Like
he did.
He wanted that authority. He wanted to have that power, not just with his Mormon following, but let's listen to me as president of the United States.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah. Because we have really good presidents today.
Yeah, now we have nothing but the best.
Anyway, this is not political. Let's move on. But I think you're right that things just changed over time, which I think is so fascinating because I was always taught that the Book of Mormon contained the fullness of the gospel.
Yes.
You couldn't become closer to God than any other book. But did it contain the fullness of the gospel? No. Where is that stuff on polygamy in there? I mean, because that's part of the gospel, right?
Yeah. Where's temple marriage? Where's the endowment? Where's sealings? Where's baptism for the dead?
Yeah.
It's not a part of the book.
But you got to keep reading it and gaslighting yourself into believing it. It's true. Because that's what they tell you.
So are those all modern day revelations? Like new prophets were like, this is going to work. This is going to work.
Well, it was all through Joseph Smith and like the Doctrine and Covenants, which was like the sequel to the Book of Mormon. He's like, well, let's make it modern day revelation. So
the sequel, bigger, better, pow, pow, pow.
More in the line. And the Doctrine and Covenants was also just like, I'm going to censure people who don't like me. I mean, we could talk about Doctrine and Covenants later, but for now, we're focusing on the Book of Mormon and how it never was what he claimed it to be, right?
Right. So Mormon epistemology, which is the method for determining if it's true, is feelings-based.
Yeah.
Pray about it. If you get a feeling, then you should make an illogical jump to, well, then the church must be true, and I must give them 10% of my income. But if you can't find out the book is true through your feelings, how else could we figure out? Well, we can examine the document and we can do a little digging around to see if reality matches up to what the book says.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when Joseph produced the book, he had no idea about DNA technology.
Two of the Great Lakes, and a lot of the cities that they had came from his day and age, like Lehigh, for example. There's a Lehigh, New York. Lots of these things that he had. And if you look at the geography from Joseph Smith's day, it makes so much sense what he was trying to convey. So we spent all of our lives racking our brains. What does this geography look like? It looked like Joseph Smith's backyard is what it looked like, right?
Exactly.
It was nuts. So
yeah.
But lots of things with the Book of Mormon that I thought was fascinating when I read the CES letter. I'm like, oh, these things that didn't make sense make sense. Do you want to jump to the Book of Abraham? You kind of alluded to that, Rob.
And I have no idea what that even is. This is the Book of Abraham is new. I know that I'm like somewhat versed in the Book of Mormon now. So.
Okay, this is
Abraham.
This is the most interesting story. And when studies have been done asking Latter-day Saints, why did you leave the LDS Church? What were your doubts and concerns? The number one historical issue is the Book of Abraham. So this is huge. Okay, so in the early 1800s, 1700s, they're pulling mummies out of pyramids and burial chambers in Egypt. A gentleman named Michael Chandler is going around America with several mummies and papyrus scrolls, charging a nickel if you want to come see these oddities, right? He's looking to get out of the business, and Joseph Smith is very interested in ancient biblical kinds of things, right? So the mummies are presented to Joseph Smith, and right away he says, oh, that's Pharaoh Necho, one of the mummies. And those papyrus, that's the writings of Abraham. Oh, and that's the writings of Joseph of Egypt. What are the odds of that? Wow, amazing. So the church pools money together, and for $2,400, they buy the mummies and the papyrus, and Joseph determines that he will translate these things. So
have that gift of translation by putting his head in a hat, right? You know, he can translate.
Yes. So he works over several years on translating these papyrus. And we have them today in the Pearl of Great Price, not only the Book of Abraham, but also some pictures now called facsimiles that were on the papyrus. And so, you know, we grew up as Latter-day Saints knowing that this is the word of God. Holy crap. But unfortunately, the papyrus was lost because, you know, when Joseph got killed, his wife Emma inherited these things. They got sold, they got passed around. At one point, they were in a museum in Chicago, but then they had a big fire in Chicago. So we all just assumed they're gone. Well, in 1965, the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art is going through their archives, and they say, wow, look at this papyrus. Oh, and on the back of it, there's some drawings for a Mormon city. I wonder if this is the Latter-day Saints Egyptian papyrus. So the church says, yes, those are ours. Thank you very much. And now that the Rosetta Stone has been actually cracked the Egyptian language, we can actually translate it.
Dang.
So, yeah, cool, right? So the church has some Egyptologists translate it, and it doesn't say anything about Abraham. It's just a funeral document. This is a problem. And so they just kind of hide it back in the archives. And, you know, people like me just grew up thinking it's true, giving our money. And then when the church was pressed on the issue, they put out these gospel topic essays, and they say, well, none of the papyrus mentions Abraham or any of the events of his life. Wait, what? Are you kidding me? There's pictures. I should show you one, but there's pictures in there that label this is Abraham, and this is. What are you talking about? It doesn't mention his life. It's right there. You know, and everything Joseph did was wrong. He got it wrong.
Well, he made it up. He didn't get it wrong.
He made it up.
He made it up. What is like more mind-boggling to me is that all of that information is readily available. And I want to break it down as an outsider. Joseph Smith said he found this, like there was this like scroll going around. He said, this is the translation of Abraham. I don't even really know who that is, but this is a translation of Abraham, and it's all about this. And then they found it buried in a museum somewhere and said, oh, this is what he was talking about. And it actually is just a funeral paper for some random person. Mm-hmm. And the church, but like what is wild to me is that every single member in the church doesn't go, fuck, and leave like that, you know, like that's, we have the internet today. It's not 1989. It's not where you have to like go buy an encyclopedia. You can like that. It's wild to me that information is out there, and that there is one believer left in the church. One.
But you have to make sense of it. You have to, because if the Book of Mormon is true, then there's a reason God did what he did with the Book of Abraham. I thought this is my favorite part. Is with those facsimiles, Erica, there are, I mean, we can show you pictures later, but it's really just Egyptian
hieroglyphics.
Just like,
yeah, it's just
what they wrote. It was some guy's funeral.
Yeah, it was like, it was these funeral things. Oh, and by the way, Abraham is Father Abraham.
And says son, sir.
And says son, Father Abraham. That's the Father Abraham.
I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is, but I sang that song.
Abraham, if you do remember in the Bible, like Abraham was this father who was desperate to have a son. And then finally, after like all of these years, he has a son, Isaac, and loved this son more than anything.
Oh, did he have to kill him?
Yeah. And then God's like, hey, you got to go kill your son. And he's like, but I don't want to. He's like, well, you need to prove your love.
Such a sweetie pie, isn't he?
And so God says, you need to go kill your son. And so Abraham takes his son Isaac up to the mountain, and Isaac's like, Dad, where's the sheep, Dad? Where's the sheep that was He's like, no, the Lord will provide a lamb. And then he's like tying his son up and putting him on this altar to sacrifice. And God's like, psych, just kidding. I wasn't really going to have you kill your son. So this is the story of Abraham,
Of a loving God.
and of a son who doesn't need therapy the rest of his life because God commanded his dad to kill him. So anyway, that's Abraham. And this is the story, goes back to when Abraham's dad tried to kill him. And so no wonder Abraham's doing it, because dad tried to sacrifice him, but no, the angel came and said, don't do it.
Hazing in a fraternity. They did it to you, you do it to them, and on and on and on.
Yeah, if you have any hazing like that, please report it to your college, please. But anyway, my favorite part of these facsimiles is there's the first one that says, oh yeah, Abraham's being sacrificed by his dad. And the second one is all of this celestial stuff. I love this part with the second one. It says, Runnels identifies this gem. Joseph Smith said that the second facsimile was God sitting on his throne. It's actually Min, the pagan Egyptian god of fertility or sex. Min is sitting on a throne with an erect penis, which can be seen in the figure. In other words, Joseph interpreted that this figure with an erect penis is Heavenly Father sitting on his throne. That was my favorite part of the CES letter. I'm like, yeah.
I mean, think about it. A lot of Christians, they don't have art depicting God because you're not supposed to create any graven images. But in Mormonism, we've got a picture of God, that our Heavenly Father, with his pee-pee showing. I mean...
Yeah, and I also love, if you look at the facsimiles, and I encourage anybody to go look at the CES letter and look at this part under the Book of Abraham. But it starts out with this is what this character represents, and it says what Joseph Smith thinks it is and what Egyptologists say it is, and they're completely contradictory. And then finally, toward the end, after a number of things, Joseph Smith's it's not to be revealed at this time. And maybe it'll be this. The Lord says not to be revealed. I think he just had ADHD and he got really distracted or really bored. He's like, oh, I can't keep.
I'm done. I want to eat my dinner.
I'm out. So when he got tired, he's not to be revealed at this present time. Right.
I've got a rendezvous with my mistress. I'll get back to that. You'll get it in the temple.
I got to meet my teenage maid in the barn. So you guys figure it out. Don't tell Emma.
Right.
But
yeah. Any other comments on the Book of Abraham? Because you said some things that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah. So at that time, Joseph Smith was getting involved with Freemasonry. So he's learning secret passwords, secret handshakes, and certain hand signs. So when he looks at that circular facsimile, which is actually, it's called a hypocephalus, you would put it underneath the mummy's head, and these spells would help project them into the afterlife or whatever. When Joseph sees on there a figure holding his hands in unique ways that look a lot like Freemasonry, he starts thinking, oh, maybe this is God teaching those secret handshakes that you're going to need to get into heaven. And let's not worry about the fact that he's making other signals with his appendages. Yes.
We know what that means. It's seen in facsimile too.
At one point, I made a TikTok video because Joseph said, the meaning and the interpretation of these cannot be had at this time, but they will be available in the temple. So I made a TikTok video saying, hey, President Nelson, I've been to the temple several times. I've never heard anything about the interpretation, and not to rush you, but it has been 196 years. So I have a chance to get around to it. I'm really curious to see what it says.
Let us know if he gets back to you.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
But yeah, it makes sense why the Book of Abraham was so frustrating for members of the church. I believed in this because in the Book of Mormon, or in the church, Eric, I don't know if you know this, but we'd have these canon, that we believed in the Bible, we believed in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we believed in the Book of Mormon, we believed in the Doctrine and Covenants, and then the Pearl of Great Price is just an appendage to the Bible, as it were. So there's the story of Moses that was translated, and the Book of Abraham that was just we're going to support what's happening in the Bible, but it just didn't, because if this fails, then everything else does. Because if he could not correctly translate this, he could not correctly translate the Book of Mormon. Because he was a fraud. What? Yeah, he was a fraud. And then the next part, we talked a little bit maybe even a little bit in length in our last CES episode, was about the Kinderhook plates. And that's the third one where we still have evidence for that. So Rob, let's hear your take on the We already
Yeah, so
which was awesome.
great. So Kinderhook, it's a place in Illinois, and some guys decide they're going to try to catch Joseph Smith. So they make these fake plates, they etch them with some funky made up symbols, they bury them with some Indian bones, and then when they're digging it up, oh, look, what is this? And some Latter-day Saints say, oh, we got a prophet who can translate this. They bring it to Joseph Smith, and right there in his scribe's journals, it says, oh, I know what this is. These are the writings of a descendant of Ham under the loins of Pharaoh. Really? Well, he didn't get around to finishing the translation, but he made a very bold claim saying that he knew what it was. And for years, the church supported Joseph's interpretation until finally the plates were scientifically tested and found to be modern metal. And then the church, backpedaled quick.
Because I never heard of the Kinderhook plates until I read the CES letter. Never heard of it, ever.
Really?
Never. Because they don't teach you that sort of thing. And if it gives you that yucky feeling in your gut,
that's the devil.
Put it away. But what it is, like critical thinking, saying like the church is not right, but you're thinking, no, it's whatever this outside source is not right. Have you heard of the Kinderhook plates before, Rob? When did you hear of it?
So I learned about them through my study of the Joseph Smith papers and reading his journals and things like that. And when I saw the CES letter, I was like, wow, this is an amazing overview. You can see the whole forest here. You can see that the church's major truth claims are deeply problematic, and the preponderance of evidence does not support the claims. In fact, the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just chalk this up as another strike against Joseph Smith. Today we're talking about 3 of his translations: Book of Mormon, Book of Abraham, Kinderhook plates. But he actually tried to translate 3 more things.
Did he?
Book of Moses. He did an inspired retranslation of the Bible. Oh, yeah. And he got tricked translating a Greek Psalter, which is an old Greek, like a book of Psalms or hymns like that.
I had never heard of that.
A minister, it's a great story. This minister had this old book. He knew exactly what it was. He went to Nauvoo and says, hey, Joseph, I understand you have a gift to translate. Could you help me understand what this is? Joseph looks at it and says, oh, that's an Egyptian dictionary. And he takes the book back and says, actually, I know exactly what the book is. It's not Greek. I mean, it's not Egyptian. It's a Greek, Psalms book. And then Joseph was like, hey, where'd Joseph go? Next thing you know, he's in a stagecoach. Gotta go. I'm busy. So at one point, I made a TikTok video where I showed Joseph Smith in a baseball uniform, but it doesn't say Dodgers. It says the translators. And he goes up to bat, and 6 times, he strikes out. I'm like, strike 6, you're out, Joseph. All of your translations are not what they purport to be. And so today, again, the pattern, we see the church backtracking and saying, well, maybe they weren't the writings of Egypt. Maybe they weren't the writings of Abraham written by his own hand. Maybe they were a catalyst that inspired his mind and set him up to receive a revelation about Abraham. Okay.
Great spin. That is great PR.
And
they're good at PR. Super good.
And I'm going to just say, I do have loads and loads of empathy for people in the church who still believe this stuff. They choose to believe, because admitting that you've been wrong about something that you dedicated your life to is hella painful. It's so painful to admit that you were wrong. And so I think there are some people that look at this and they think, my whole worldview is going to change. So I'm just going to dig in deeper and I'm going to accept this. And I have to find some kind of explanation for this, or else I will look like a fool. I felt foolish. I felt like an idiot learning these things after a lifetime of being in the church and reading my scriptures and going to seminary and going to institute and serving a mission and all of these things. I felt like an idiot that I didn't know these things, but it wasn't my fault.
I think it's the opposite. Like, from an outsider's perspective, when I look at the way, when you're indoctrinated and sort of brainwashed from a really young age, and you're taught whenever, you're going to have these thoughts. You're going to have these things that don't make sense, or questions, or critical thinking, doubts. When that happens, you need to know that is Satan, and you are basically fucking up, and you need to put it away. And I can imagine, growing up and hearing that, and then, to me, it's in some ways sort of, I mean, I know I just said, like, how is anyone still a member? But I can also understand that if you're indoctrinated and brainwashed, and also told whenever you have any of these thoughts, you are being infiltrated by the devil, and taking that to heart. And if everyone around you believes that, finding your way out, to me, is like the total antithesis of being silly or stupid. Like, being able to find your way out of that when everyone and everything around you is telling you this is the way, that is super commendable and amazing to me. Like, that's pretty fantastic. So
respect.
Air 5. Way to go.
One of the things that really helped me during my deconstruction is an LDS life coach named April Price, who has a podcast called 100% Awesome. And she's, I'm sure, a faithful member, but she talked about, well, had you asked me what I thought of life coaches, I would have probably said, like, just get some real credentials, go to school, like, get. But I was shocked at how well this woman understood neuroscience. And she taught me that feelings are not facts. Yeah. Feelings are the products of our thoughts. And if we want different feelings, we have to choose different thoughts. And as much as I'm able to get onto TikTok and boldly call Joseph Smith on his balls and strikes, that really comes from a place of privilege. Because if my marriage depended upon me going to church and being physically in but mentally out, I would probably still be in church. If my marriage was on the line, if my employment was on the line, we get involved in the church for emotional reasons, and logical reasons generally can't pull us out. So I do have empathy for people who are still in it.
Me too.
And it's not, like you're saying, it's not even just being indoctrinated, but it's like having one of the things that is sort of insidious and gross about the church is like the tentacles. And we've talked about that, how it like just sort of sews itself into every fabric of your life. So your community, your well-being, it's everything. And when you leave, even if you are able to like logic and reason your way out and go, wait, this isn't the devil, this is critical thinking. There's a lot to be lost. And especially depending on like where you are in your life in terms of like your community or your spouse or your job even. And definitely here in Utah, when I was working in Mormon Central and we would interview people to come in for jobs, most of the people I was working with were Mormon, and the people that would come in to interview would proudly say, at some point, let us know, I'm Mormon. They'd say, when I did my mission, blah, blah. And, letting us know you should hire me because I'm Mormon. And I'd be like, that's a strike against you. but everyone else there was going, yes. So like that is a part of everything. And probably I live in Utah, definitely a part of like, if I go look for a job, I'm sure this podcast will be a strike against me. That's the way that things work. So it's interesting that I think it's fantastic that people can find their way out, even when there's such collateral damage or possible damage to their lives in terms of community, spousal relationships, jobs, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So if anybody listening or watching, again, we have nothing against members of the church. It's just these lies, this dishonesty that is causing people to suffer.
And I loved your comment about the church interweaving every aspect of your life. I mean, the church was on my calendar. It was in my wallet. It was in the fabric of the underwear I was wearing. And I remember at one point we were in therapy talking about marital intimacy. And the therapist says, man, it just feels like there's somebody else in the bedroom there kind of involved with. And I said, well, my wife does have a picture of Jesus. He does watch quite a bit. So, I mean, it's everywhere in your.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So taking that out, like if you just think of like some sort of like It actually makes me think right now of this is my one.
You only get one here.
I go off the rails sometimes.
Get the censor button ready.
No, it's not going to be a censor, but there's an organism called a botfly, and its life cycle are you familiar with the botfly? If you were in Peru, you might know. So the botfly is this huge fucking fly, and it cannot land on mammals because it's like, and you'll be like swatted away. So what it does is it catches a mosquito, it lays its eggs on the underside of the mosquito, and the little tiny mosquito, when it gets to a mammal, the eggs denurture, hatch, and they go into the skin of a human or a mammal. Now they dig into your skin, and the larvae, whatever, like as they're growing in your skin, they develop these like I don't know what you call them, like prongs, thorns, something that dig deep into your muscle. So if you try to rip it out, you're going to rip your whole, like if it digs in here, you're going to rip your whole arm muscle out. What you have to do is suffocate it. You have to put meat on it, and then the worm will like crawl out of it and into the meat. That's a long way of saying it's kind of similar to what the church does in terms of like digging into your muscle. And when you rip it out, it's really painful unless you suffocate that fucker and make it crawl into the dead meat.
So just so you know, that's our new logo for this podcast. Suffocate that sucker.
Well, I have like a botfly like crawling into dead meat.
Oh gosh. Well, anyway, we wanted to I just wanted to like kind of wrap up this part before we have our trying moment in just a minute. But I wanted to read like a conclusion that came from the CES letter about everything we talked about, the Book of Mormon, the Book of Abraham, and the Kinderhook plates. It says in the CES letter, Joseph Smith claimed to have translated 3 ancient records. The Book of Abraham, proven a fraud. Kinderhook plates, found to be a hoax. The Book of Mormon, the only one of the 3 for which we do not have the original. I'm sure he was only wrong with 2 out of the 3. After all, would you buy a 3rd car from a man who had already sold you 2 clunkers? Way to go with your critical thinking, Mr. Jeremy Reynolds. I think that is brilliant.
Respect.
Respect indeed. So at this point, we want to do, and as part of our episode, we're going to do a trying moment.
And now it's time for a trying moment.
So this week's trying moment is we're going to play a little game with our Nevermo, Erica. I mean, Rob and I know the answers to these because we are well versed in the scriptures, right? But this game that we're going to play is called Scripture, Sci-Fi, or Fantasy. So we're going to give you a synopsis. We're each going to like take turns giving you a synopsis, and you have to guess if this is scripture, sci-fi, or a fantasy. Does that sound good?
From like a sci-fi film or book or something?
Yeah, from a sci-fi or a fantasy film or book.
Okay.
Okay, so you get to guess just based on our synopses. Okay. So I'm pulling it up right here. Rob, if you have it ready to go, why don't you start with the first one? Ready, get set.
Okay. In this scenario, a man kills someone in their sleep so that he can steal a sacred artifact and have his family escape a doomed city. Fantasy, sci-fi, or Mormon scripture?
It almost sounds like an episode of Indiana Jones. Where would that, or like an Indiana Jones film? If
Sure,
like a
fantasy,
part of that. Would that be
right.
fantasy?
That is the Book of Mormon. That's nice one. Hole for one.
Try.
Yeah, Nephi straight up murders Laban. Like the Lord's like, murdering is wrong except for this one time. Cut off his head, but make sure that none of the blood gets on his clothes that you're going to be wearing. That was the story. Okay, here's number 2. A hero defends the king's sheep by chopping off the arms of every man who tries to scatter them. He brings the pile of arms to the king as proof.
Okay, that sounds Mormon-y. Is that Mormon-y?
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding, ding, ding, ding.
ding.
For one.
17, Alma is basically the Book of Mormon's Rambo, is what he's doing, is he's cutting off everybody's arms.
Wait, he cut off say that again? He cut off everyone's arm?
Yeah, so in this story, there's this missionary, like he's a missionary. His name's Ammon, and he goes to the king and he's like, hey, king, all I want to do is serve you. And the king's like, cool, why don't you go watch
I need
my
some
sheep?
arms.
No, he's like, I just want you to watch the sheep, which people have been scattering. And so he goes and watches the sheep. And then all of these bad guys come like, we're going to scatter your sheep. And Alma says, no, you're not. And he starts cutting off arms right and left. And then he's like, Here, king, people tried to get your sheep and I protected them, and here are the arms as proof.
What the fuck?
Yeah, scripture. So
These are good stories for children.
Yes, yes.
Read them
I
before
could
they
see
get
how that would really resonate with 5-year-olds. Oh my God.
all right, your turn.
Okay, ready? A group of people build a wooden submarine to cross an ocean, but because it's dark inside, they have an extraterrestrial being touch rocks, which will then glow for the duration of the trip, producing light.
Is that Scientology?
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
It sounds like Scientology. I'm going with ding Scientology. So I guess that's religion, but no, Mormony.
That's the Book of Mormon. Yes, this was, probably about 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. They were building wooden submarines to travel to America.
Prior to Noah, right? Was Noah, because he was.
This would have been after Noah, around the time of the Tower of Babel.
Right.
Ah, so we've gone from boats to submarines. I see.
Yeah, and the submarines were full of bees and animals and excrement. Sometimes the submarines would tip over and be upside down and stuff. So
it works.
It sounds really pleasant. It sounds like a very pleasant journey.
Absolutely, it does. How about this one, Erica? A humble farm boy learns he's heir to a throne, and the only one that can wield a legendary sword.
Oh, is that Knights of the Round Table fantasy?
Yeah, it could be King Arthur. You're absolutely right, but it could also be Nephi once he gets his hands on the sword of Laban. Sure.
Son of a whore. So close.
No, I'll give you half credit. It was both.
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to skip down to number 14, Kate.
Go for it.
So number 14, a trio of mysterious men wander around the earth. They show up just in time to help people, but then they vanish and disappear.
So this reminds me, I get a bunch of stories confused because there were 3 dudes in robes and there were other 2 dudes in robes. I'm going to go Mormon with this one because it sounds Mormon-y with 3 dudes and a vision and disappearing. Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, 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 ding. Got one. So yeah, these were 3 of Jesus's American apostles blessed to live until the second coming. So, 2,000 years later, they're still wandering around, fixing flat tires, helping out.
Yeah. So they could be right out here in daybreak, walking around the lake. I'm going to look for them.
You should look for them.
I'm going to look for them. And if I see them, into the picture and we'll share it with so keep an eye out, everybody. If I see them here.
My opinion though, is that they're jerks. How hard would it be for them to go tell President Nelson where the Nephite cities are so that archaeologists can just dig it up and validate the whole Book of Mormon premise?
Right.
Where's the
Rude.
fun in that? It's like an Easter egg hunt. It's fun for thousands of years. For hundreds, I guess.
Okay, this will be our last one, okay? A small band of survivors flees their destroyed homeland, led by a prophetic figure who guides them to a promised land.
That sounds Mormon.
It was, but it could also be science fiction because the story is the Nephites leaving Jerusalem to come here to the promised land, but it's also Battlestar Galactica, which was created by a Mormon. And so a lot of, Battlestar Galactica is very deeply based in Mormon traditions. They've got the 12 tribes and one thing another based on Mormon traditions.
I haven't seen Battlestar Galactica yet. It was a series, right?
I think it was. I never really saw much of it, but yeah, it was created by a member of the church.
How fascinating.
Yeah, right?
And that's a great question to end on because really that's what Joseph Smith was all about. Repackaging, remixing old ideas and creating imagined systems that have some perks, but are very deeply problematic and hurtful to certain minority groups in the church. So
Bible fanfic is what
and also half of the population, which are women.
Yeah.
So to minorities and half of the human population.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for playing that, Erica. Good job. We'd be learning Mormon doctrine and history and all at once. It's so fun.
Learning so much. Every once in a while she'll say something and I'm like, oh, that's like the Nephites and blah, blah, blah. Oh, fuck. I know too much.
Yeah. Well, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Hawaii.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That is.
Let's do this again, especially to talk about spiritual journeys through plant medicine and all the other things.
That would be amazing.
That would absolutely be awesome.
Yeah.
Would definitely love that.
Rob, we want to have our audience know where they can find you. So where can they find you if they're looking for your stuff?
You can find me on TikTok. My name there is Rob T. It used to be called President Please Help Me, but Rob T for now. I'm also on Instagram or Facebook as my name, Rob Tobler. So yeah, reach out. I love meeting people on any side of the Mormon experience. I'm here to support you, and come on out to Hawaii. I'll take you out to lunch. We'll do it.
Yay!
We're on our way.
Yes, we
She
are.
knows on the road.
As for us, you can find me. I'm Midlife Exmo. I'm on TikTok and on Instagram a little bit, and on Facebook as well. So you can follow my content there. And Erica,
On TikTok, I'm Americana. I am ERIKANA. Yeah. And we're NoMos on Facebook and everywhere else. And so please, if you like our content, give us a like, a subscribe, please share. That would be great because we're having fun doing what we're doing. And
now we do.
We want everyone else to have fun with us.
Yeah. And make sure you give Rob a follow. He does great content, and we're so grateful for his content.
Thank you.
Today and always. So without further ado, Rob, you've got your beverage with you.
A little bit left.
A little bit. We got
as long as it's not water.
No, this is my wife made me a mocha, iced mocha, because God really only cares about the temperature of your caffeine. So this is okay.
As long as it's cold, it's fine.
So without further ado, everybody,
cheers to deconstructing Mormonism.